Ben Horner joins us from Boston to discuss all things Chelsea, the founding of the Boston Blues supporters group, top 4 predictions, and Champions League final Chelsea team selection. We down here in the Rat Tail Bunker and Barbershop studio, and this is the Boys in Bolos podcast. Welcome back to the Boys in Bolos podcast. Jarrett, we're down here. Week 37 has ended. It was quick. It was a quick turnaround from last pod. It was only like 2 days ago, but here we are. Week 38, last week of the season.
This is a crazy week, and we have a guest, and I'll introduce him soon. This is a crazy week because we recorded Monday night. It's Wednesday we're recording right at the end of week 37, and we may record Sunday night right after week 38 due to some commitments I have in the upcoming week. So it's totally an English week because we have 3 different events in 1 week, which is normally we try to do 1 a week. But tonight we have a Chelsea fan on all the way, super far away. You know, he's in Massachusetts. It's great. Ben, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Jarrett and Jeff, for having me on the pod. Super excited to be here.
It's what a time to have a Chelsea fan, you know?
Also, Ben, you're part of the Boston Chelsea group, supporters group?
He's like sworn in blood.
Yeah, it's like
there's a huge secret.
hierarchy.
Yeah, it's like a secret society, like the Skulls situation.
Well, I mean, there's no cabal going on or anything like that. But yeah, so I am the current club president of the Boston Blues, the official supporters club for Greater Boston and Upper New England. I am also the co-founder of the club back in its original form in 2010, which is a story that I don't know, we may get into later, but it's a good one that involves someone underage running around Boston trying to convince pub landlords to open up early when, you know, I'm not even old enough to drink.
Let's start right there. In post-COVID times, we definitely want to start kind of similar to what you're talking about in 2010 when you were running around and saying, hey, you know what? Like, if you open up, I'm sure this is similar to the conversation. If you open up at 7:30, I can get 30 paying customers in here to have your English breakfast and probably each buy about 2 pints. You know, what does that look like for you revenue-wise? And I feel like it's an easier conversation when you say we're going to do it 38 times throughout a year. It seems like an easy conversation. Moving forward with the pod post-pandemic, when we're in a different place, everyone's vaccinated, things are opened up. We are really excited to go out and go to the local pubs and do live streams, you know, talk to people before, do a halftime show, do a post game, throw it up on YouTube, really just continue to create content around the game that we all love. And I was super pumped when I came across the Chelsea Football Club, you know, the local club that you're the president of, because for the past 5 to 6 to 7, actually closer to a decade, I've really been out of the area. And so I would go to a bar in DC that was actually over in Arlington, which was the Chelsea club and the Chelsea bar, which was awesome. When I was in New York living for a time, I went to the Chelsea bar, also awesome.
Legends, Football Factory.
Oh my
proper
gosh.
Place.
The most proper. And I've seen many Chelsea finals there. I also saw the New England Revolution lose there. So Legends is an actual legendary place. I actually don't know how it fared through COVID, but I'm sure it's fine.
Oh, they're fine. The
yeah,
New York Blues
okay.
are coming in numbers every single week nowadays. They are quite all right.
Is there a Boston-based Chelsea bar?
Of course. Yeah, we meet for so it was obviously a little different in COVID, but we are at the Banshee every single match. If there is a Chelsea game on, you will find at least one more blue shirt at the pub when it's going on. I mean, Ray and his staff down there, they do a phenomenal job, and I think it's important to note that, like, yes, it's the Chelsea pub, but it's the pub for football. In my opinion, it's the best football pub in Boston, right? And it's got like 6 or 7 fairly sizable supporters clubs that meet out of there. In addition to us, the Boston Blues, you've got the the Celtic group, which has been around for pushing 25 years, meeting up down there. You've got the Man City group meeting up down there. That's going to make Saturday the 29th quite fun. You got a group of West Ham guys that meet up down there, Wolverhampton, Everton down there as well. So, I mean, every single week you're going to get that good banter and everything like that. The staff is phenomenal, and to their credit, they did everything that they needed to do and that they could do to keep things operational and safe during the last year plus. And now that things are looking better, and fortunately for us here in Mass, things are looking a little better. And those who are comfortable and vaccinated, and now that restrictions are lifted, are going to be more than welcome to join us back at the pub. There's been there's been a whole host of faces that I have not seen in quite some time down at the pub that I cannot wait to see as we start to get to be able to meet up again down at the Banshee. And really, guys, if you're going to start a tour around Boston and the Boston football pubs, I really can't think of a better place to start than a place that's going to have 4 or 5 different matches on from 7:30 to 12, and get a great cross section of fans and a good bit of banter to start your day.
I couldn't agree more.
That's
That
great.
sounds phenomenal.
It's good info.
That's yeah.
It's phenomenal info.
Phenomenal info. Maybe he'll get a royalty one day.
Yeah, one day.
Well, I'll send my rider along after the recording.
Exactly. You can drop an invoice.
I mean, Spurs Media Clears, which is I think just a straight up just a Spurs bar, and they've been very similar, like following COVID protocol and been accommodating for Spurs fans once they reopen. So
one of the things that I miss most about the bar scene when you're seeing your team and there's all these other people on with your jersey and you literally all speak a very common language, even if you've never met before, because the DC bar that I'd go to, and especially Legends, it's a very transient thing. New York and DC are very transient. People move in and out of there. So you look it up and you go, was not only enjoying the win, but when your team loses, having other people to kind of feel like, before you get back on the subway or before you head home, because winning, obviously, when you're winning, even with when I'm just with Jeff or whatever, but when you lose, I don't know, there was this feeling of like, you're not the only one. The Chelsea community, whatever it's the Spurs community, the Man City community, is global. These are global products and global communities. And yeah, so whenever COVID ends, we're really excited to go out. And so was the Banshee the first place that you started and you went and you knocked and you said, hey, how do we make this happen?
No, so it started out that we went to Lear, may Lear, serve in peace, long as it gone on Boylston Street. I don't know if you guys know, that whole stretch is decimated. Lear's gone, unfortunately, but we started at Lear way back in like 2009, just me and a couple of other people meeting up for breakfast. We went up. They didn't open up for the early matches though, so then we tried Phoenix Landing, and we met there for a little while. And LFC Boston is there, and they have staked that as their territory, for many years. And it was it was pretty clear that we needed to find a different space of our own, or at the very least that wasn't sharing with LFC Boston. And we were lucky enough to find the Banshee. One of our members at the time was the head of AO Boston and the Midnight Riders. And he had both of those clubs meeting down at the Banshee fairly regularly. And he reached out to recommend that we chat with Ray, the owner down there. And we did. And I'll kind of remember heading down there to meet him. And he's like, listen, you're not going to have any issue with me. Bring your group down. We'll love to have you. It's all fun and banter on the weekends anyways. So we've been there since 2010, and the staff there could not be better. But it's Jarrett, it's interesting you mentioned like that bit about community and like the transitory nature of New York and DC, because Boston is really similar in a lot of the same ways. You think about how many colleges and how many people come to greater Boston to do, doctoral work or post-grad work or whatever. And that's who is the soccer fans in America right now, right? Is people, in the late teens to 20s and who now are starting to grow into, 30s and 40s and whatnot. So we see that quite frequently with the Boston Blues. We'll maintain a fairly consistent base of about 20 to 30 regulars, but within that, talking non-COVID times, of course, and no one really knows what the future is going to hold, but in non-COVID times we would have a base of 20 to 30 regulars, and you'd get some rotation in and out every year, every 2 years. Some people would move in, so within that though, there's still that community aspect, right? Yes, it's global, but it's also still local, right? Like I can go to any big city in the US and I can look up the club and I can know that I'm going to have people to hang out with at the very least on match day. I know that, like you said, there's going to be like-minded people that I can talk to, that I can celebrate with, that I can commiserate with. And that's really powerful. And I think that all along is kind of like what we were just trying to do with the Boston Blues is be that point of community for Chelsea fans in Boston. And that's, that's kind of what we're really excited to get back to doing in a more physical in-person type way, as opposed to just Zoom meetups or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I even like would admire your group because like the conversation and the chat on Facebook and how you guys kind of communicate is much more positive. I mean, of course you're in a club that's I'm always comparing to Spurs, but our club is very much more snarky and like self-deprecating, and your club is like very positive, and that's very like for me that's pretty refreshing. You love to see it. It seems like a lot like you guys have way more to celebrate. It seems like, but either way, it's I agree with you guys. It's.
But I also think some of that is just mindset as well too, and I think for me, I try not to take each game too seriously. Now, obviously, there are games right now where that goes out the window. We're in a run of, 6 cup finals in 6 straight matches de facto between Champions League final, FA Cup final, and as important as the league matches are. But like at the end of the day, there are some people who support their team solely for the wins and the losses, right? Solely for the enjoyment, the rush that they get out of the win, and then they're crushed with the disappointment. More power to them, to each their own. For me, I support Chelsea because of everything that goes along with it. The friends I've made, the community that I've had, the laughs, the jokes, whatever it may be, the enjoyment I get from working with the Boston Blues, like even that. So if we lose, we lose. Like at the end of the day, Chelsea was almost relegated to the 3rd tier within a lot of people's lifetimes. Like there is some perspective that I think newer fans are privileged not to have, and I do try and make it so that I keep a little bit of that perspective and remember that at the end of the day it could all be a lot worse.
Yeah.
So losing, it's not fun. Frank Lampard getting the sack mid-season, I was truly devastated, but at the end of the day the supporters are the constant at the club, not any result and not any one person.
Yeah, and to steal something from Barcelona, more than a club, right? And I think that's Chelsea embodies that. I think any of the big clubs in the world, the top 30 clubs, they should embody that. And when they get away from that, that's when they get in trouble. And we could talk about Spurs right now. I think Spurs will be fine without Harry Kane. I think they'll get enough money that they can go out and moneyball it and get 2 or 3 players that are actually going to fill out the lineup. And in the aggregate, they'll be better. And I feel the same way about Chelsea. I think about the final without N'Golo Kante, and yeah, it would be way more difficult, but I still think we could probably win. Way more difficult. I see you rolling your eyes. Way more difficult.
I'm not rolling my eyes. What I'm thinking is the hinge point there is that Kovacic is 100% fit and ready to go 90.
Yes, he's not hurt. He's not hurt. This is true.
And what I think is doable there is Kovacic has a lot of the same kind of tireless work rate in the midfield. He can be that engine in a way that Jorginho isn't always able to be, right?
Jorginho is not an engine. On his CV, there's no word that says engine.
Jorginho is the Vespa.
He's about 60 cc's.
Yeah, exactly.
Max.
Right.
Like, on the highway, he's in the breakdown.
Yeah, he can pick a pass, but at a nice casual, easy speed. I think it can happen. I think hopefully N'Golo was taken off on a precautionary measure, but I also think that not for nothing, throwing a little bit of a tactical change at a team that you've already played 3 times this year is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. And I'll say this for Tuchel is he has tactically typically been very, very good. I think there are times where he's been naive, he's overlooked games, and he's gotten his hand caught in the cookie jar as a result. Brighton comes to mind. Arsenal comes to mind, where, he was looking ahead to a different game in a way that was really a mistake. But when he deploys a tactical plan, the team tends to stick to it and it tends to succeed more often than not. So if he's got a full week to prepare, knowing what his squad is or might be, and can prepare a couple of different game plans, and yeah, I'm with you 100%. There's every chance that Chelsea can maybe not just hang with, but win this final.
Do you think, talking if we're just focusing straight on tactics, I don't see a way that they basically don't play a 3-5-2, something similar to that. Because that's what they've been playing. They've been playing 3 center backs, wing backs, 2 midfielders. Mason Mount kind of is somewhere between, he's really then the link between the 2 forwards and the midfield, which will probably be Jorginho and Conte if they're both healthy. Do you think he goes outside of that? Because for me, it's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And lately, we can't be scored upon unless they're a worldie or we make a mistake. Yeah. Worldie being Tillemans, or a mistake being we're dicking around with it in the back and we give it up and somebody scores on us. So I'm kind of like, if that's working, bring it on, City. Like, I'm not worried about what they have, honestly.
Yeah, I think you're nail on head there. I think our defense has just been remarkably stout under Tuchel, and I think that starts with the play of Mendy. I'll give Kepa some credit. He's played very, very well under Tuchel. You could put 2 Kepas in the net and they're not saving that Tielemans strike. Credit where it's due. That was an absolute blinder. But what I think is if it's not necessarily a 3-5-2, what it will be is maybe a 3-4-1-2, with Mason kind of just in a little bit more of a free floating role, as you're saying. But I think one of the things that we're seeing is that front 3, front 2, that front 1-2, whatever it is, there's a lot of freedom of movement there to take up space that you find advantageous. And it was actually interesting to watch the game against Leicester, because what I saw more of in that game than I had in the previous month or so was Werner coming back to get the ball and turning into space and then having runners ahead of him. That was a different tactical look than we've perhaps seen, and that also might have been execution from certain players. But I think there's a lot of different variations of this set, and I don't think Tuchel has really scratched the surface of them yet.
There's one thing that is very true about this Chelsea team, and it's the fact that they can't score a ton of goals. And it's whether it comes down to Werner not being able to finish. It comes down to just Pulisic just not getting the direct kind of attacking style that he likes to play.
Leaving your 2 natural number 9s on the bench and out of the squad.
Drew not playing. Yeah,
Tammy Abraham not playing.
Exactly, being left off the squad. In fact, like he wasn't even on the bench. I don't think last game. And
against Leicester, I believe he
was.
I saw him
either
dressed,
way,
but either way,
he was on the bench. Yeah,
he wasn't going to get playing time.
Either way, what it comes down to is Werner headed a ball on literally the 3-yard box into his hand to score. God. Like the guy just, it's either he's having an unlucky season, he's just not there in the Premier League. I don't know, but they need to score. Like I don't know. There's a problem with that team. When Jorginho is like the top goal scorer in the team
with Tammy Abraham, unless I'm wrong. Those are the guys who scored the most goals. And
I'm not saying you guys need to have a 20 goal scorer. I'm not saying there needs to be a guy who has 20 goals, 10 assists. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there needs to be a guy who's not scoring all his goals on penalty kicks.
No doubt about that. I mean, that's been basically what we've been hungry for since Diego Costa, through his tantrum and left, right? Was that striker who was gonna bang you in 20 to 25 without breaking a sweat. I'm not entirely sold that that's not Timo yet. It's his first year, and this year of all years is not necessarily the best gauge of it. No one is really fully fit, fully rested at any point this year. I think playing in sterile environments, and I mean that in the literal and figurative sense, literal of the COVID protocols and figurative of there was no fans in the building, right? And we've seen it over the last week or so. it definitely has an impact in the intensity and the drive, and the players are saying it themselves. And I also want to point out that there are plenty of examples, not just at Chelsea, but in the Premier League on a broader scale, that may struggle in that first year to adapt. And I don't think Timo was physically ready, like strength wise. I don't think he was prepared for how much he was going to get battered around. But I think he deserves the opportunity to put on the muscle and put in the work and maybe come around. He's also contributed in a lot of other ways. He is comically snake bit. Like it is just laughable at this point. He can get kicked in the box in the back of the leg and not get a penalty.
Sure.
But
yeah, that's true.
I think your point is a good one. They need to score goals, and you look up and down the roster and you say, okay, who is going to score? Who's going to score? Who's going to score the big goal? And it actually has been a little bit of scoring by committee. Hakeem Ziyech has a few. Pulisic has a few. Mount has 6 and a few assists, and it feels like he is one of the leading scorers. It it's been a shared workload, and long term, you're right, not viable. That's why I kind of hope that Tammy was going to stick around and become that player, because I think he's got that potential. But am I worried about who's going to be the 20 goal scorer right now? No. Right now, I'm just worried about putting in a defensive shift against Villa, putting in a defensive effort of all defensive efforts against City, and maybe hopefully getting out of the season with a little hardware and a top 4 finish. The transfer business is the transfer business, and I'll worry about that when the final whistle has gone. But yeah, it's been the question all year, right? Where are the goals going to come from?
I think it's more, for me, it's more just like you see Timo do all the work, right? And you see him do all the work. You see him get to the touchline. You see him, but just like bottle it. Like, and I don't mean it, it's just, and I want him to succeed. I want him to succeed, right? You want him to come into the league and like score a bunch of goals. I'm not saying 20 goals. I'm just saying like put away the chances that you should put away. Like that's it. That's it. That's all I'm asking.
The thing about Timo, there's a couple things. One, the thing that Jeff brought up was absolutely shocking. Like there needs to be a side-by-side picture, and then I have to explain one day to my unborn son how this happened. That the number 9 on the team couldn't head a ball in when he's standing on the goal line without it hitting his hand. And then I'll show him a freeze frame of a goalie 8 to 12 yards out at an angle who flicks it in. That is insane. Like, it's almost comical. But I will say that I think Timo stays. If he stays and we don't pick basically a Holland or someone who's going to take his time, I think he scores 20-plus goals next season. And the reason why I say that is because normally when a forward is in super shitty form, you look at them and they literally physically look depressing. Timo's having fun. He's out there. He's smiling. He's still hustling. A lot of guys who are struggling, they don't even hustle anymore. So I'm excited to see, and honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Timo scores against Man City. The one thing I actually worry about Timo is not his confidence, is not his ability to actually finish. The guy cannot stay on side.
Oh, you took the words right out of my mouth.
And there's a little bit to be said about leading the line, and like people Inzaghi, somebody said, he was born off sides as a joke because he was always on the last shoulder just so he always had the most max amount of like advantage. But Timo, sometimes I'm like, does he understand the offside rule? He'll be running the line and he just can't figure it out. And if he can just, if he even just went to the game and said, okay, Timo, I'm going to focus on being onside and I'm going to focus on making horizontal runs along the line and then making my run in. He's so fast over 10 to 15 yards. There are very few center backs that can keep up with him. So I don't know why he doesn't need to cheat. He's not Chris Woods. Like, he doesn't need to cheat.
Yeah, for me, a lot of those offsides aren't even a matter of him cheating per se. It's him making a run a half second early because he doesn't necessarily have the timing down with his teammates, or he's not working hard enough to get back. And the second category that frustrates me the most, it was a couple of weeks ago. It might have been the Man City semifinal where Jorginho picks it up just inside halfway and drills it right to him, and Timo takes it on the turn, rounds the keeper, and puts it in the net, and it's waved off because he's clearly a step offside. The frustration there for me is, Jorginho can pick that pass with that first touch. all he needs is to one and then ping it to you. So you should be, as a striker, knowing which of your teammates is getting ready to get onto the ball and get back on side. That is the thing that frustrates me more about Timo. That's like the one criticism that I have of him this year. My hope is that maybe with a full summer of training, full squad training, some of that chemistry will start to pick up a little bit. Players might be a little bit more in sync. I think, you know, guys, if we zoom out, I think we don't even know the full scope of how COVID impacted this year, from like really broad levels all the way down to the minutia, right? Like, don't forget, they weren't training together for the majority of the summer. They couldn't have full squads together until September,
Yeah.
right? So
True.
there's still the betting in process for a new transfer this year was probably harder than it was in almost any other year. And I just try to keep that in mind when I assess Timo, also Kai, who had COVID and is finally starting to come around in the second half of the year. So I think it's too early to write them off. But definitely there's a lot of room for some improvements there. That is for sure.
I actually don't think that Werner, like I criticize Werner because I just want him to finish, but he does contribute to the team in other ways. Obviously, he hustles super hard, super fast. You also if you're a defender against Werner, you have to respect him. So he's pulling guys off the ball and leaving other guys open. So Werner's fine for me. Havertz had COVID. He's actually come around second half of the season. Ziyech is actually my biggest gripe with Chelsea and the transfers because he just looks so unimpressive. He looks just not a player for the Premier League, and that could change, but he just doesn't look up to the level that he needs to be at in the Premier League. He only has a left foot. He's always looking to ping the ball around in his left foot. He gets muscle off the ball constantly. He makes, I don't know, he's just, and there is a reason why he doesn't start games, and I think a lot of, and Frank saw it, and now Tuchel's seeing it. Like sell him at a loss. Get him. He can go back to the Eredivisie or whatever he is.
Eredivisie.
Yeah, I always say
that's that's a tough word for you.
Tough word for me.
I love it.
But Jarrett and I talk about Ziyech all the time, and
Ziyech for me, I coached soccer at the college level for a couple of years, and I'm not a great coach, but I would break something down if there was a kid who dribbled a lot, right? I would say, okay, when you get the ball, you have three options: you can dribble, you can shoot, or you can pass. Most times, you probably shouldn't shoot, because it's hard to score goals in soccer, and shooting from 25 yards out, not probably going to work. You can dribble, but you're going to get crunched real quick if you dribble in college soccer, especially in the Northeast, because it's just like rugby with cleats, essentially. So your best option is to pass. And you'll be most useful if you pass and then move into space. And Ziyech does not move off the ball. He'll give the ball and he just stays. And sometimes, yeah, you should stay to stretch the defense, to make an overload situation. But when he gets the ball, Jeff is totally right. He always looks to hit a long pass, just a ping across the field, or he tries to shoot. And he's so predictable. Now, I'll step back from that and I'll say that in the FA Cup semi, he did that where he got the ball and he shot really quick and he scored a goal. So it does work at certain times. But like I said, when you have the option to shoot, pass, and dribble, you have to understand when you need to do that. And most times when he makes a pass, he doesn't follow the ball and then work off that like Mason Mount and Pulisic do excellently.
Yeah.
They cause so many problems for defenders. So for me, I don't really know. Do you think Ziyech, if you know, are you trying to offload Ziyech this summer? Because if I'm Chelsea, I'm trying to definitely put him on loan minimally. He needs to get more Premier League time and understand how this situation works.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to think about because he's not exactly young, right? I mean, he's not old, but he's not 22, 23. He's in his late 20s, right? And my thing with Ziyech is I feel as though sometimes he is that one or two trick pony, right? He's got a magic wand of a left foot. He can do whatever he wants with the ball if he's got the time and space to do what he wants to do. But for me, a lot of the time he's giving up the ball cheaply in midfield, which makes it, really tough. It's so hard because he's so enigmatic, and you get frustrated, you get ready to write him off, and then he scores in each of the games against City, right? He scores in the cup semifinal. He scores the howitzer of a volley at the Etihad, and it's almost like you almost look at it and you're like, well, 2-2 against these guys. How can we not leave you? How can we leave you out in Porto? And it's going to be a selection headache for him. I think you have to at least give him a second year. I've joked that at times that like it's almost like we signed him off of YouTube compilations and that the 2 matches against us in the group stage last year. But
I mean, that's it.
I
That's
don't
it.
think you're going to get a whole lot back from him. You've paid out the money. You've got the loan army subsidizing a lot of things on the other side of the book. So I think he's another one that, if he gets another year, is that the worst thing in the world? Probably not. I also think that it's worth mentioning that I don't feel as though we're going to see another glut of academy grads pushing through next year under Tuchel the way that we did a couple of years ago under the transfer ban. So he's not going to be fighting with youngsters for his place. I'm fine with Hakeem having another year to
Yeah.
stick it
My
out.
problem with it with Chelsea, if I'm a Chelsea supporter, is that
Which you are now.
which I am now because that's just the way it is. But it's that I guess my problem is that you thought you were going to get X amount of goals from Ziyech, right? You thought you were going to get X amount of goals from Ziyech, you're going to X amount of goals from Pulisic, X amount of goals from Werner, and you're not getting those goals, right? And so maybe you'll get more goals from Timo, right? Maybe you'll get more goals from Havertz, but are you going to get anything more from Ziyech? Are you going to get anything more from him? Because that's really my question. And if that's not the case, you need to bring somebody in that's going to get you more goals. Because realistically, defense is not the problem with your team right now. And barring
switch from where we were at the start of the year
which is crazy, which is a crazy thing to say.
It's insane.
Which
It's
is insane that I truly thought that Chelsea was going to be challenging for the championship just based on the transfers that were coming in, and that has not. It's been the flip side, right? And so Tuchel came in and just the defense is the 3-back works for you guys. Zuma, Rudiger look fantastic.
Azpilicueta
looked good. Like Jorginho looks a lot better. It's the scoring, and like that's why Haaland rumors have come into play, because you guys need to score goals, and like all these other teams have a 20-goal scorer. And
also, we have a multi-billionaire owner, and he's one of the best young strikers on the planet. So of course we're rumored to be in for for Haaland. Who wouldn't be in for Haaland? You raise a really good point, Jeff, and Jarrett. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. But when I look at Ziyech, I see him going one of two ways. I see him going either Yuri Zhirkov or Florian Malouda. And Malouda, remember, in that first year, he was really crap. Like for the better part of that entire first season. And then think about what a key piece of that Chelsea team he turned into in 08-09, in 09-10. He and Ashley Cole ran the left side of the Premier League for the entire year when Chelsea was running riot to the title and the double. Is he going to go that route? Or is he going to go the route of the Yuri Zhirkov, who was a bit of a flashy signing, never really did all that much, had a moment or two of brilliance, will always have that 30-yard blinder of a volley in Moscow in the Champions League group stage, but like that's really about it in terms of his impact at Chelsea. So I think when I look at Ziyech, that's what I see, is him going either the Malouda way or more trending towards Yuri Zhirkov's outcome at Chelsea. And I also don't think that that's too big of a miss. If you miss on Ziyech, it's not like you paid 90 million, 100 million for him. Yeah. You paid a good penny for him, but number one, it's not our money, so I'm not necessarily all that concerned. And number two, like sometimes you swing and you miss on transfers, and I would rather us take a gamble on someone like that than splash out 120 million for
Eden Hazard.
Late stage Eden Hazard. Exactly right.
So I like what you're saying about the Yuri Zhirkov and the Florent Malouda, because For me, it's neither of those. He's more Florent Maluda, just because Jerkoff was a defender. He was an outside back, if I remember, and he was dubbed as the Russian Ronaldinho, and they tried to put him farther up the field. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
think
that's fair.
he never. So he was more of a
He
defender. He was
played
more of
in
like,
midfield for Chelsea, but he was a natural natural back. You are correct
yeah,
there.
they
Yeah.
tried to do what they're trying to do with Reece James, but he was more of a Danny Alves in a 4-4-2 or a Marcelo or I can't think of the guy's name right now. Wow. But, in a 4-4-2, so when they're overloaded on one side, he can kind of sneak around the back and have some space to clip it in. But they would try to play him kind of like a wing back like they're doing with Reece James, and he just wasn't Reece James. He wasn't quick enough, and he wasn't strong enough. So I think that didn't work. Florent Maluda came in, and I think he had a lot of other, like, people he got along with. He was Francophone, and we've always had a lot of Francophone players. So I think he felt more at home. Ziyech comes from the Eredivisie, which is one of the weaker European leagues, and I actually see more of a connection between what happened with Quadrado when he came, because I was so excited when he came. But he works in the Italian league where the game is slow and he can isolate and then take players on. Ziyech would kill in the Italian league, but this isn't the Italian league.
That's the third name that I was thinking of, and it's so funny that you brought him up. Yeah.
Yeah, because for me, it's more like a Quadrado. What happened with Quadrado? He came for 6 months. It was cute. I think he had like an assist, and then he left. Same thing with Falcao. There are certain types of players that just will not make it in the Premier League due to the pedigree and just the way that they play the game. It's not for everyone. Not saying that it's, you have to play in the Premier League to play the best soccer, but I think it is the quickest and most technical of the game on the planet. And I don't think many people would argue with that. And Timo Werner is the best example. He scored goals for fun in the Bundesliga. He comes here and he's getting muscles off the ball. And more than anything, I just think with Chelsea and Timo, I kind of want to go back to that. We don't have a 10. We don't have an obvious 10. So he's not getting these silver platter things. He's getting the ball from the 6 or the 8, like Jorginho giving a 70-yard ball. It's harder to time than a De Bruyne who's going to turn the holding 4 or the 6 of the other team and slide you in a nice angled ball, 10-yard pass, and you just take one touch and you curl it around the goalie. So I'm interested to see what happens with Ziyech. My thing is not that Chelsea won't give him a chance. It's that we're going to out-transfer him. We're going to bring in somebody else, and I just think that there are other people ahead of him. Ironically, though, because he has scored against City, do you think he starts the final?
Yeah, I do. I think every indication we've seen in Tuchel's team selection points towards Timo getting the start. Timo was not an effective sub. We've seen that. He doesn't really, as it's ironic because of how much of a burst of speed he has, but I always feel like when he comes on as a sub, he has a really hard time getting involved in the game and he just kind of fades out. So I think if you want him involved, he has to be involved from the start. And I think a final in the biggest final in club football is something that you really, really don't want to have on your bench. You want it on the field, right? Like one slip, one mistake. So I think, look, I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why you could rationalize for Timo, but I think at the end of the day, yes, I think he's going to start because everything we've seen under Tuchel points to Timo being the first choice up front.
And Ziyech starting as well.
I think he's got a real good shout. He's got a real good shout because of how well he performed against City in the other 2 games.
Because if he's playing Mason Mount in that 9.5 role, sitting in front of Conte and Jorginho, and he plays Timo, I think Jeff would agree that Timo would start, right? Then for me, he's got to play Pulisic on the other side. Because if he plays Ziyech over Pulisic, that to me is insanity. And I think one of the reasons why he likes playing these smaller, quicker guys is just because he likes to press. We've recovered so many lost balls in their defensive third or in the middle third than we did in the beginning of the season. And that may actually just be the difference. Frank went with a different thing. Tommy Abrams doesn't scare defenders. Giroud is slow over 10 yards. But when you have Timo, Pulisic, and Mason Mount, you can't be half-stepping because you're going to get caught out and anything can happen. But I want to know what your prediction is for the final. Are we going to penalties again? Because that was really stressful.
I don't know if my heart can take it.
Because 08, 08 and 2012. Pens.
Oh, gosh.
Pens.
And then 2019 League Cup against City went to Pens. Oh, geez. I say, well, of course, I think we're going to win. Why would I say anything otherwise? Chelsea to win the 2021 Champions League. We'll edit that out. Chelsea to win the 2021 Champions League. Absolutely. Who else am I going to pick?
Exactly. Well, there's only two options, and it can't be the light blue guys. What's your score prediction if you had to give one? Or you can say we're going to Pens, because I honestly think here's my thought. I was thinking about this on the drive over to the studio today. The studio, it sounds fancy. It's Jeff's basement. I think out of 100%, I'll give City 50%. I think 50% of the results, they win the game outright. 30% of the results, I think we win the game outright. And 20%, we go to overtime. And from there, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who wins, but I think that City probably have, if you flip a coin, they're going to get, 50%, 30%. I think we beat them, and 20% it goes to overtime. And I'm sure of those 20%, you could say 10% it goes to overtime, 10% it goes to penalties, meaning that I think City are definitely the favorites, but that I think is definitely in our favor.
Yeah, I think anything that comes down to us relying on our defensive foundation, and as strong as it's been, is something that bodes well for Chelsea. I'm going to say 1-0 Chelsea, and it takes 10 years off my life in the final 5 minutes of the match.
I'm going to go down to penalties. Chelsea wins on penalties just because Mendy's a better keeper, shot stopper than Ederson.
If it goes to penalties, I mean...
Mendy's a better shot stopper than Ederson, 100%.
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
But my question is, are they going to pull a Kroll like the way Holland did to Costa Rica in 2014? And are they going to bring in Kepa? Because apparently he's the penalty god. Is it like a D2 Julie the Cat
Oh,
Gaffney
no,
situation?
I don't think Kepa is ever going to be the quote-unquote penalty god at Chelsea.
I mean,
again.
he stayed on the field.
Yeah, how'd that work for us? I think he had his chance to claim that title, and he missed that opportunity.
Oh, he did.
Oh, God.
So, all right, 1-0. Jeff, you say penalties. I don't even know. It's so hard. I just want us to win. I want us to win also because City shouldn't even been in the fucking Champions League. Pardon my Spanish. So for them to win would be like a kind of an approving of what the Super League was, which is like the more money you have, the more titles you win. And I don't think that they should have been in anyways because of the financial fair play fiasco. So I'm hoping for many different things for the sanctity of football and as a Chelsea fan that we pull it out. Not saying that we're much better because we have a Russian billionaire. I'm just saying you guys
did serve your transfer ban though.
We served our time. We did our time.
You did our time.
We did our civic duty to the world.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's look at the final week, and we're only going to focus on games that matter. So we have Wolves, Manchester United. We're not going to focus on that. But we have Aston Villa, Chelsea. What do you think for this game, Ben? We're going to throw it to you.
Yeah, I mean, everything in the season comes down to this in terms of the Premier League. It's been made abundantly clear that Tuchel's primary directive was to get Chelsea back into the Champions League. Full stop. That must happen. And we have 90 minutes to do that. I think
we have two avenues to do that.
Two avenues to do that, but let's. I'd rather
beat Aston Villa.
Yeah, I'd rather focus on that avenue first, and not have to go on that backup route. I don't like our chances to do that twice in my lifetime, to be quite honest. Villa is pesky. They just beat Tottenham today. They've got some young, exciting talent. Grealish, his hairstyle annoys the crap out of me, but he's a great player. Ollie Watkins and Ben Rama are fun as well. I still think Chelsea will have the depth. It's just a matter of whether they have the intestinal fortitude, and they showed a little bit of that. They dug deep in our win over Leicester. I think they'll be able to display that again, and we'll come away with the 3 points in the Champions League spot.
I will tell you why Chelsea will win. It took a Reguilon own goal and a really bad defensive flub for on Spurs' part today to give Aston Villa that win. Because let me tell you something, they can shoot a lot. They don't shoot a lot on goal. They love to pepper the ball around the net, but it doesn't always hit on goal. Grealish back is definitely a pain in the ass, but Chelsea's quality will shine through in that game. You guys will win probably 2-0.
Tell you what, that Reggae own goal was a worldie, though.
It
Didn't
was a
do that again
worldie.
if you
You're
try.
never going to do that if you try.
That's what I said.
The second goal was crazy, too, because it was like they were trying to pass out the back, and they just basically bottled it, and they gave it away, and then Watkins just kind of like got in there and kind of duffed it in. So, in all honesty, that game should have been tied 1-1, and Spurs aren't very good. Like, Spurs are a mid-table team, at like upper mid-table team. They're definitely not a top 4 team, so you guys will be fine. You guys will be more than fine.
Jeff,
I'm hoping you guys
Let's
win.
go right to Spurs.
Sure.
Are you guys beating Leicester?
No. It's going to be either a loss or a tie. There's no chance we can win that game because Leicester has something. Leicester actually has a lot to play for that last game. I think they're going to be way more hungry to win out and
Hungrier
secure top
than
4.
Spurs to get in the top 6.
Yeah, Spurs don't care. The players that matter in that team are all either leaving, like Bale, Kane, checked out like Son, or those are the players that matter and that can win them the game, and they don't care. It doesn't seem like they care much anymore, and it doesn't seem like Ryan Mason really knows what lineup to put out there because he's playing. I don't know. He's playing fucking Winks. So
Chelsea are going to get no favors from Spurs against Leicester. I am fully expecting Leicester is going to win, which is why I really,
true.
Chelsea
Yes.
needs to take care of our business and just worry about what's happening on the pitch at Villa Park.
Chelsea's
Exactly.
the only team out of Chelsea, Liverpool, and Leicester who has their hands and their destiny in their hands. Leicester and Liverpool could both win and still not get in, and just depending upon what happens in goal differential, like other weird things. So Chelsea just needs to win, and then we need to move on to the final, and that will be good. The other game of actual quasi-consequence, because if Leeds win and other things happen, other teams lose, they could get in. Leeds, West Brom. Ben, what do you think on that one?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Leeds, wrapping up a really solid, respectable return season in the top flight with a win over West Brom, who are just really, really limping to the end of their string here. And Big Sam has decided it's time for him to leave. He doesn't want to be bothered with the last match. They're all going to be playing for contracts, then moves away elsewhere. Leeds look a fun team. I like Leeds in this one. Patrick Bamford probably going to get himself another goal too.
Yeah, it when you have a billionaire owner, it makes a difference.
It helps.
It helps.
It really helps.
It really helps.
Should try it sometime.
You should try it.
You should try it. You should try something. The next game that is of consequence, definitely to Chelsea, is Liverpool Crystal Palace, and I'm going to take this game because historically it was Crystal Palace and Chelsea, but Crystal Palace had a lot to do with taking away Liverpool's title in I think 2014, 2015 or 2013, 2014. I'm getting those confused.
13-14.
13-14 when they tied at Crystal Palace 3-3, and that was when Luis Suarez was crying and said famously, I think we just lost it. And so there is a team there in Palace that could be really annoying. They have young Eze. I think he's a shining talent, which I don't think he stays at Palace long, to be fair. I obviously will help Chelsea because Liverpool lost. Chelsea's in the Champions League mathematically. So I'm going to go with a Liverpool upset here. I'm going to go with a Crystal Palace upset. Just because a tie is easy to say and a Liverpool wins probably what's going to happen. So I'm going to push a little bit against the grain and say, why not Crystal Palace? They could do it. It's also going to be, I think, Hodgson's last game in charge.
Yep.
So he's had a very long storied career as both a player and a coach. I think there's some history there. And I also don't think Liverpool, barring some Alisson header, are really there. But our last guest we had on, Chris, was saying at the same time, when you see that header go in, you're like, this has got to be some destiny shit because what the hell? So I'm going to go with Crystal Palace winning that. I don't know if everyone else is in agreement, but I've said what I've said.
I wish I could have that same sort of optimism. I like where your head's at with the 3-3 draw back in 2014 at Selhurst. Having watched Palace completely bottle it at the end to Arsenal earlier on Tuesday or Wednesday, I should say. I just don't think that they have the quality or the mental strength to go against a Liverpool team that really just rolled through Burnley, and I think they're going to roll to another win here. And yet again, this is why Chelsea needs to take care of business.
Facts. Facts.
I think actually
Mans-
just one final call out on that. Like, yes, it is Roy Hodgson's last game. I think the most interesting thing for Palace in this is who's going to be the next manager. There's a lot of interesting names getting tipped from
Frank's
Eddie
been
Howe
tipped.
to Frank Lampard, who has always been very, very close with Roy Hodgson. So it'd be interesting to watch that one over the summer.
Man City Everton. Jeff, you want to take this one? And we don't. The only reason why we're mentioning this is because Everton, if they win, other things happen. They still have a chance to get into Europe, which would probably vindicate Ancelotti a bit, who I think is still one of the better coaches in the Prem. He just may not have the best tools in the shed.
Yeah, I think Everton win is much more important than City winning. I think Everton's going to be a little more hungry for that win. I don't know if they have it in them to even beat a
Academy City
team.
There's going to be U14 players.
I literally don't think they have the squad to beat even like the bench players from City. And I know City just they play football like better than any other team in the Premier League. It doesn't matter who they're playing against. I just can't pick against them. I don't want Everton to win, obviously. But I mean, I could see it being, a 1-1 tie. But I'm still gonna go with City. 2-1.
Ben, the next game of consequence is West Ham Southampton. Now, West Ham win this, they're in Europe. It's that simple.
Yeah.
They've lost their UCL road, but if they win this, they're in Europe. Do you think there's a way that they don't beat Southampton?
I think they've got this one. They actually, West Ham, I was really impressed with the way that they fought back from an early goal against West Brom in the directional derby. And I think David Moyes, I gotta give some begrudging respect. He's had a really, really good positive impact on that squad, and he's got them playing really, really well. I think they're going to get the win. I think Southampton has got their eyes on their summer holidays already. I also think there's some players at Southampton who are going to be, kind of going through the motions, trying to make sure they don't get hurt before their Euros. Definitely going to take West Ham to lock up. Will that be Europa League, the Europa Conference League? I don't know which spot that would be for them, but I think they'll have some European competition next year.
It's crazy. Well, I think if they win, they get Europa League, and that will keep some of the players there, which is important for them. Get them some cash to pay some players that they want to keep there, like Lingard, and then potentially bring in some new players, which is, I mean, I think that's really the big thing is like if you're going to compete compete in the Premier League, compete in Europa League, you need a bunch of players. You need rotation, right? And so it doesn't have to be the flashiest players, right? They just need squad players
They can just pick up James Ward-Prowse.
Yeah,
he's phenomenal.
To get them through those group match stages that, like, obviously you're playing like Austrian farmers. Like, you just need bodies to keep playing. And I don't know if some of the like bench West Ham players can do that. But it's true. I mean, it's true. And that's what we were talking about earlier in the season is like, are West Ham able to compete at both fronts? I'm still not convinced that they are, because their current squad cannot do that. They can't compete on a European front, maybe a Europa League front, but definitely not Champions League front, and the Premier League, right? And so talk about Europe all you want, but the clubs that do the best in Europe are the clubs that have the most depth, right? And so it doesn't do you any good if you're going to go to Europe for a couple games and then you fizzle out. If you're like Leicester and like you get to the group stage, like they fell apart in Europe, right? They fell apart in Europa League. I mean, they got beat by some not great teams. So
yeah, it's such a double-edged sword because you want the money, you want the visibility, right? But also, do you really want to be flying to Japanpur for a Thursday night game and then coming back for a Saturday afternoon where you're just going to get bruised and battered by West Brom? But well, not West Brom, not next year, that's for sure. But you're just going to get bruised and battered because we know that there's no off weeks in the Premier League, right? I think you're spot on, Jeff. Is they would need to bulk out their squad a good amount. But you know what? Actually, I would not be surprised to see them doing some cherry picking from Fulham. I would not be surprised to see them doing some cherry picking from, I don't really think that there's anyone worth picking on West Brom or Sheffield United, but you get the idea. I think they're going to be actually a fairly attractive spot for that mid to, up top half of the table player, but not necessarily the star guys.
Last game, and you guys can both weigh on. Ben, I'll go to you first. Arsenal Brighton. This is gonna be a good game. This actually maybe, other than the Chelsea Leicester game. Other than the Tottenham Leicester game, which I think will be better than maybe Jeff gives it credit for. Arsenal Brighton, I think, is going to be actually the game to watch.
I'm going to go with Brighton. My brother is a Gooner, so I'm never going to pick Arsenal, just so I can always give him that little tweak. And also, not for nothing, Brighton had a really nice win against Arsenal at some point within the last, I don't know if it was, I forget which season it was part of because my brain has just melded time altogether. But they had a nice win at the Amex against them with like a late goal. Was that last year?
It was in the restart. It was in the restart. Because that's when Mape hurt Leno. Yeah. And Leno went off, and there were no fans. It was in one of those first games.
That's right.
So Brighton beat them. Yeah. I mean, Brighton beat Man U this year.
Man City.
No, they beat Man United, and then they looked at it, and then they gave Bruno a penalty, and then Man U beat him. Sorry, they were going to tie. Yep. So this Brighton team
also beat
just
Liverpool.
Beat Man City. Yes. So, I mean, this Brighton team's not fun.
They just beat City.
They just beat City.
Yeah, look, I think...
And they beat Liverpool.
I like Brighton here. Why not? Again, I'm never going to pick Arsenal to win anything.
Well, you're at the right place because neither I want to see Brighton. I think Brighton win this one. I think it's close. I think it's by a goal. I don't know how it happens, but if
knowing
Arsenal
Brighton, it'll be something comical and just an absolute Benny Hill clown show of a goal because they haven't been able to score all year.
If Arsenal loses, they're no Europe, and Arsenal
that's actually better for them. Then they don't have to pay the fine and have their compensation garnished by UEFA.
Arsenal could finish if they lose. Things happening, right? Arsenal could finish 10th.
Yeah, I mean, if Leeds win, Arsenal lose.
If Leeds win, which I think is very likely, as we pointed out. So
they deserve it. They hustle their ass off. Fittest team in the Premier League. It's true.
Oh, you're talking about Leeds. I thought you were talking about
Leeds.
Arsenal. I thought you were being,
God, Arsenal's a trash, dude.
Arsenal's bad. Arsenal did beat Chelsea.
Chelsea beat Chelsea.
It's happened a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, look, Chelsea lost that game because Tuchel had one eye on Saturday and Jorginho had no eyes on his passing target. Let's just leave it at that.
Oh, no, I'm not even talking about that. I was thinking about the 3-1 when we lost at the beginning of the season when Saka had that mishit that went in. Xhaka scored a free kick, his first time ever, including practice. And I forget the other goal because I was so angry. But anyway, yeah, somehow Arsenal did the double over us, but they may finish 10th. That's how people want to know how competitive the Premier League. Here's how competitive. A team that's getting relegated beat the team that's going to the Champions League final 5-2 within a couple months. And a team that's finishing 10th did a double over a team that's going to the Champions League final. That's how competitive the Premier League. And that team's Chelsea. And on that note, Ben, thank you for joining us on the pod. And,
thank you so much for having me. It was a blast, guys, and I hope to see you down at the Banshee sooner rather than later. And
if I come to the Banshee,
you will be asked to leave.
But if I wear very neutral garb, like if I'm wearing what I'm wearing now,
neutral, like
just this. If I'm wearing like something like this,
look like clothes.
Like just clothes, no
Don't
Spurs
show up
gear.
To the Banshee
No
in the buff.
Spurs. I'll leave my
I'm a Spurs fan.
If I'll leave my Spurs,
no shirt, no Spurs.
Yeah,
sorry.
I want to prove to you I didn't have a Roy Keane tattoo on my back.
No, you do. Listen,
Robbie Keane.
Everyone is welcome at the Banshee. You won't find many Spurs fans there on match day, but
no.
if you wanted to come down with Jarrett for a match, we would obviously welcome you and I'd buy your first pint.
Oh, you could,
that's nice.
You could wear Drogba. You could wear this one.
I was gonna say you got
could wear
plenty to
this one.
pick from there, huh?
I know.
Exactly.
Well, here's the thing. It's like if Spurs aren't playing Chelsea, I'm usually rooting for
It's
Chelsea.
also because you're a deep patriot, and Christian Pulisic
That's true.
is
That's
from
one.
Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
America's finest.
America's finest. Thank you, Ben, once again, and ciao.
Ciao. Thanks for listening to the Boys and Bolos podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, Twitch at Boys and Bolos.
If you'd like to be a guest, please reach out. You can hit us on any of the social media accounts that Jeff just mentioned, or email us directly at boysandbolos@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening, and see you next time.